Welcome back, everyone, to the Triple O Show, one-on-one with Nate and Aziz. I know it's been a while. There were some complications. We're just gonna say that our technical equipment towards ACL during the playoffs.
Yeah, some small fires we were putting out. It's all good.
But we are back, and man, I know we've got a lot to cover, but we are going to start with the NBA draft, which happened 2 days ago.
I feel like it's still happening right now. It was that awesome, man.
Were we traded there? Because there was just some third round picks that
Yeah.
were I don't know if we were in that top 8 protected or the 2022.
I don't know.
There might be a Zaire Wade deal somewhere in there, but
To be determined, I'm guessing. Yeah.
there were a lot of wheeling and dealing that went down the other night. But the number one thing I want to talk about is the Atlanta Hawks. Can we give a clap for Travis Lincoln and Atlanta Hawks? Because, oh my goodness.
Full cheers, man. Very well done.
One of my friends wanted to invite me to the draft party, and I told him, I was like, I can't go because I feel like what the Hawks done in the past, they're going to mess up these picks, and I'm going to flip out, and I don't need people to see that in public. And
See a whole nother side of you, man.
And lo and behold, like right after I had texted him that, I saw the deal where the Hawks traded the 8th, 17th, and 35th pick for the 4th pick, and I'm like, see, this is exactly why I couldn't be out in public for this. So,
Yeah, that was a beautiful move. I think, I'm surprised they were able to swing that, given the drop off, I'd say, after top 5, 6 guys, being able to, push those draft picks back up. Also to have, bringing in. Okay, so we can talk about the number 4 first.
Yeah,
Are you surprised
let's talk
with
about
our man
Hunter.
DeAndre Hunter, the Cavalier?
I do see where the potential and the upside is for him to be in the 4th pick. I think Chauncey Billups compared him to a young Kawhi.
Yeah, that threw me a little, but I can see that the more I think about it.
Because people are so wrapped up and enamored in what Kawhi's become, but he wasn't that when he first came into the league.
Exactly.
I was telling somebody the other day, remember you guys just used to look at me crazy 3 years ago when I said Jimmy Butler was better than Kawhi, which he was. Chicago Jimmy Butler.
Hey, he played a little bit harder, more intense.
But nonetheless, there's different circumstances.
Yeah,
but
for
Kawhi wasn't what he was now, and that's what you get from working hard and being in a system that develops you. So, by all means, with what Atlanta's going to or their proposed future plans, I can see how a guy like DeAndre Hunter he doesn't need to become Kawhi with the players that you have around him, but I see that potential and upside. So
yeah, has the same disposition too. Real seems to be more of a quiet guy, but very effective, efficient, well-rounded. We were talking about it as well with the addition of Cam Reddish, who was their other draft pick. He's not going to have to focus so much on the offensive side of the floor, so it gives him less pressure and some time to just fall into that system.
Definitely, and you can see as a big of impact that DeAndre Hunter was last year, because not necessarily saying it's all him, but he was the 4th pick in the draft this year, and so Virginia went from being the first ever number 1 seed to be knocked out of the tournament in the first round to winning a national championship.
Oh, yeah.
And he didn't play in that game last year when they lost to UMBC, which a lot of people, just kind of throw that out the window. But the analysts were like, hey, you got to look. They were missing an NBA player. Now you can say you're missing a top 5 pick.
For
so
sure.
you see the difference that he can make on the squad. So.
Yeah, it's his versatility, I think, that just, is going to give the Hawks a significant impact right at the beginning.
Positionless basketball.
Yeah, exactly. Dude's very well built. He kind of reminds me of like Jeff Green. Kawhi is a good comparison.
Yeah, I see some Jeff Green.
But yeah, if he can use his athleticism, eventually to his advantage too, he's gonna be a strong player for the Hawks, man.
So do you think is he a 3 or a 4 on this Hawks squad?
I'd say he's their 4. Yeah, I'm gonna slot in Cam at the 3. They might put Herter at the 3 as well, but
yeah, that's gonna be my next question before I gush over Cam Reddish, because I'm wondering what is their lineup now, because you have Trey at the 1, obviously, But then you've got a bunch of guys between 6'7" and 6'9". You've got Herter, Reddish, Collins, and Hunter now, which I expect to see that lineup a lot during the year, those 5 guys. But is that necessarily your starting lineup? Can any of those guys be a center in the East?
Right, exactly. I mean, John Collins, I think, could be, a small ball center, to say the least. But with that athleticism on, at each position, I think it'll allow them to flex when necessary. Guard, multiple positions. I'd definitely, try to optimize that early and see if you can create some fast-paced basketball. Trey push the ball. Get your shooters where they need to be. And, eventually Cam's going to me, be the guy that's going to have to learn how to operate in isolation other than Trey. Those are the only 2 guys on the floor, I think, that should potentially demand the ball.
Definitely.
So, we'll see. I think they're definitely going to have to take a look back at their bench because, going into the playoffs next year, they're going to need some depth. But I don't know. I like that group right now. It's young. It's tough. They got nothing much to lose, so I like it.
So, and I think that may be something that they should look into because you're a young team. You can afford to, mess with lineups and see what works. So maybe you do put a John Collins out there at the 5 at the beginning of the year and just see how that goes. But say that doesn't work out. So out of Herter, Hunter, and Reddish, which one of those guys do you think should come off the bench?
I'm definitely gonna have to say Reddish. Unfortunately, Hunter's your number 4. Herter's, I think he's gonna have a great season for the Hawks, man. He was showing, a lot of strides last year, so I wouldn't see him taking a step back. And they want to build some confidence in Hunter. And I think they want to build some confidence in Cam, which is why he will start to. Maybe not the first game of the season. Who knows? But you're going to have both those guys on the floor the majority of the time, I think. Or all 3 of those guys.
Yeah.
And, Collins, too. Look, if they feel like he's not fitting, ideally into the 5 slot, he might have to slide over to the 4, come up. I wouldn't say he's coming off the bench, but
he's definitely their 4 right now.
Yeah, if he needs to stay at that position and they explore someone else at center, that's a possibility too. But I like the ability to have, outside of your center, John Collins, everyone can shoot the ball. Yeah. I think that's important today, so I like it.
Which just made me think about, is there a possibility that out of that Herter, Reddish, Hunter trio, 2 of those guys might have to come off the bench? Because remember, in order to get that 17th pick that they ended up trading to get the 4th pick, they traded Torian Prince, and in return, they got Alan Crabb. So are you paying Alan Crabb $18 million to come off the bench? I mean, he doesn't have a choice, but from a standpoint as you're paying him, you want to get the most out of him.
I mean, honestly, it's almost as if I think the Hawks are just paying their debts in so many ways. It's like you've paid to have some great draft picks, and now you owe some money on the back.
Right.
You're gonna let that guy just sit. You're gonna pay your money, but you're gonna focus on the assets that you brought in. So I don't know. I mean, Alan Crabb has never shown me anything, that those 3 guys can't do. So, to absorb that deal was, I think a necessary move for them.
I think he's going to have to realize now, even though I think he's only been in the league 5 years maybe. Now you're a veteran. You're playing a team with a bunch of 1-2 guys, so you need to realize, at least for the duration of your contract, because that's the thing about them having guys like Alan Crabb, Solomon Hill, and I can't remember the other person, but they're making more money than they should, but there's only 1 or 2 years on their deal.
Right.
So those guys need to kind of get into a different role and say, hey, obviously the Hawks are looking to the future, and these younger players, so I need to find a way to, be a mentor, contribute where I can, because clearly they're the priority.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I would feel obligated to do that, being paid that much. Like, I'm not here to just sit.
In theory.
Right. Yeah, not everybody's a motivated individual, but you're right. I mean, that's another thing about kind of bridging the gap with going from the draft into training camp into the season, is you need guys in that rotation that are gonna kind of enable a transition period and lead through difficult circumstances, show guys how to close out games, all that kind of stuff. So Trey, look, it's funny too how quickly a player can feel like a veteran. He's now he'll be a playoff point guard. He'll be a postseason point guard. People will know him for that. So he'll have the ability to lead, throughout the season, definitely.
He really came into his own at the end of the year, and you can see, like you said, the leadership on a team like that. Like they were looking for a person. Yeah, you had Vince Carter, was your veteran, and he was definitely shout out to Vince Carter.
Is he coming back? Did he say he's not? Or
no, he said he is coming back.
Okay.
Yeah, this will be his last year. He did not confirm, what team, but he is coming back.
Yeah,
I want to say shout out to Vince Carter, because I actually met him 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
He was at a battle rap event, and
what?
Yeah,
really?
Standing on stage, and I'm like, that's Vince Carter. So shout out to Vince Carter,
funny.
man. Really nice guy. Like, with as angry as people are during these rap events, like, everyone was really nice, and he was too. I even took a picture with him.
That's
so
awesome. I didn't know he was in the battle rap scene.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I hope he actually goes into being an analyst. I think he's very well versed and well spoken. So
could you see him signing with the Warriors next year?
No.
They need some people. That's another.
I see the big three knocking on his door. So
he's gonna be somewhere. But yeah, shout out to Vince Carter.
That's
so
cool. Yeah,
Cam Reddish. Oh man.
Yeah, probably, dude. I mean, in my opinion, he has probably one of the highest ceilings in this whole draft.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite surprised he actually slipped past. My Bulls had the number 7 pick, and we'll talk about a little bit of that in just a moment. But I'm surprised we didn't pick him up, just given not only what he showed. I think he showed maximum potential throughout his one season at Duke, but also I think there's enough players that are very similar to his style of play in today's game that you would gamble on his potential.
Right.
A guy like Paul George comes to mind exactly, wherein he could be a two-way dominant player. Chicago, we need a heavy insert of offense into our lineup. Obviously, we took a point guard, which is something we need as well. But
quotation marks.
Right. Everyone's subject to that these days. But yeah, I think he will do wonders for the Hawks, man, in the long term. If he's given the right opportunities, given the right sort of pump of, like we said, optimism from the organization, then I think he'll be awesome.
And I think he'll get that because, like we were saying, outside of Trae Young, you don't really have guys on the team that are creating their own offense.
Yeah.
John Collins is getting a lot of pick and pop and pick and drive stuff with Trae Young. Herter's more, he's the clay for their team.
Finding
is what we're
himself
saying.
for the threes, yeah.
And everybody else just kind of fits in. So I think Cam Reddish is the perfect player to fit into that system because it gives you a perimeter ball handler and scorer, which they didn't have. And like we're saying, I think aside from maybe your Bulls, but that's a whole nother situation. I think he just made perfect sense for the Hawks. I don't think you get the best out of Cam Reddish if he goes to
say Cleveland
or the Suns or Washington or even the Pelicans. Although I thought it was a little interesting because initially when the Pelicans had that 4th pick before they traded it to Atlanta, I was thinking maybe you do look at a guy like Cam Reddish just because Brandon Ingram, although he's been cleared with health issues, you just never know if they're stagnant or reoccurring. So you might want to draft a wing just in case that doesn't work out. But they did what they did, moving those picks, which I'm happy because it worked out for Atlanta. But I just think Atlanta was the perfect place for Cam Reddish. Like,
why do you think they didn't possibly take him at 4?
I think they were the reports that I read and some interviews that I heard. Atlanta was just completely enamored with DeAndre Hunter.
Okay.
Atlanta was the only team he worked out for. So no other team had his medical reports and some other stuff. So I think they just loved him so much, and they knew from, I guess, what they heard around the league that Cam Reddish, for whatever reason, just wasn't gaining a lot of traction. So they figured once they made the deal, which it all worked out, that we can still get Cam at 10 and move up and get Hunter at 4, because they had the 8th, 10th, and 17th pick.
Right.
So maybe they didn't see somebody that they really liked at 17. So they figured, okay, we can move up and still get the 2 guys we really coveted.
Yeah.
Which to me,
excellent move. Excellent move.
To me, it's still strange because, albeit Cam, he had a solid season at Duke. But whenever you're playing with the number 1 and number 2, recruits from the past year, like, of course you're not going to be able to show your full capability. But Cam Reddish was that guy in high school.
He's a baller.
Like,
he is a flat-out baller. And I think we can look at him as a guy who has more... I mean, I'm going to keep using versatility because I think that's really going to be something the Hawks are going to need to cherish. Yeah. Is he can put, once he learns to really put it on the floor, he can pick and pop. He can spot up. He can hit the mid-range, play off the ball. It's going to give them just so much dynamic aspects to their offense that, I mean, I could easily see him and Trey just being, one of the best young 1-2 punches in the league offensively.
For sure.
It was a good risk. And like we said, they're lucky enough that he did slip, because I'm surprised some other teams didn't realize what he can do.
Yeah, I had a very joyous yell when I realized when Washington took Rui Hachimura at 9, I was like, this is going to happen. Right? So now looking back at it, just to wrap it up, do you think Trae Young and Cam Reddish are worth Luka Doncic? Or how do you think that deal works out?
From last year?
Yeah.
That's
what ends up. That's what that deal ended up being. Trae Young and Cam Reddish for Luka.
I mean, honestly, straight up, it would have been a good enough deal. And it's not to say that. I'm not gonna say at this stage Trae is better than Luka and vice versa.
It's definitely too early to judge.
Exactly, but that's 2 assets versus 1, and Trae showed he's just as good, if not better, than Luka. And I don't know. There's something, I tried to think about that a few weeks ago, actually, if Luka was on that Hawks lineup from last year, how he would have really impacted the team. And I don't know. It was still kind of hard for me to decipher, because in so many ways, they have similar games. They're offensive players, but they're able to facilitate excellently.
Yeah.
But Trae's, I think, pick and roll game is very strong. And for a guy like John Collins in particular, who's really working on that, I think that helped the team a lot last year. So, all in all, look, man, you got a great point guard and a great potential two-way player. So, I love that deal.
I think it was a really good deal. People were, saying it was just awful. I think, that's what comes with our age and our social media, is that people just like to hate things because they think it's cool. And so, so many people were just, downvoting that deal as it was just awful. And they were like, oh, Luka's the next this and that. And then, like you said, Trae came on it toward the end of the year, and you saw, oh, he is an NBA point guard and a pretty damn good one in his first season.
Yeah. So,
like you said, they offer different things, but I don't think, they would have been good. But I think Luka doesn't complement John Collins the way Trae Young does.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not a very quick player, athletic, and so there's things he can do, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And so, like you're saying, that combined with just the potential that Cam Reddish can become, what his ceiling or floor may be, I think it's a good deal, and it'll end up turning out being good for both. So I am very excited for Summer League this year.
Hey man, our coaches have they have a fantastic job to do, I'm sure. But they're gonna have some fun with it, so look forward to it.
And as well, they picked up they traded that 35th pick, but then they bought a 34th. I don't know how that worked out. But they drafted Bruno Fernando from Maryland. He's 6'10", center.
Dang, another tall Bruno.
Yeah. But I'm interested to see. I think because that's the one thing we're saying. Who's going to be the Hawks center of the future?
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's that guy, but I think
Al will come back.
Right. Hey, they've got money to throw at someone.
Seriously.
Why not?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think, and I can't equate them to Boston, but I'm thinking about the potential of the Hawks the next couple seasons to, draw in some seasoned players, some stars.
They're going to have the money to do it.
Yeah. If they can prove themselves as a, viable playoff team, then hopefully we can convince some folks. Right. But we'll see, man.
To be determined.
Yeah.
Well, that was my love affair of the Hawks draft. Thanks for sticking around. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of our disappointments from the draft.
Oh,